issued. Moving on now, the Nigerian government has been taking steps to address the challenges of ease of doing business in the country with various initiatives, including the establishment of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC. These initiatives aim to further simplify business processes, reduce regulatory burdens, and increase transparency in government dealings. But according to experts, government must continue to improve on some of these initiatives, create a more business-friendly environment to attract more foreign investments and to drive economic growth. Well, let's look at this very critically. And for more on this, I'm being joined by an investment analyst. She's with Chapel Hill Denham, Nabila Mohammed. Good afternoon, Nabila. It's good to really have you on the program. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Tolu. It's good to see you too.
Yes, I think I'd like us to start with the state and, of course, impact made so far with economic reforms of this administration. Notably, the likes of IMF and World Bank have continued to talk about what President Tinubu is doing, but the fallout of what it is to the masses is making the story look the other way. What do you make of these policies, and where are we with regards to impact on the masses and the economy?
Thank you so much for that question, Mr. Tolu. And if we are going to speak on policies of the current administration, we cannot ignore two key policies that they have introduced: the FX removal, the FX unification, as well as the removal of fuel subsidy. However, there are other policies that they have come up with in the power sector, like power sector reforms, the tax committee that they set up in order to, just reform that space as well, that would help to improve the government revenues. So all of these are policies that they have put in place, and it's 1 year, it's over a year of this administration. Now, the likely impact, desired impact, is not what we are seeing currently from the average Nigerian standpoint. And this is because we do not expect that these policies would reflect positively in at least 1 year's time. But then we should see that there is something that the government is doing in terms of making sure that, as you mentioned earlier, enabling the environment, making it more conducive for not just the average Nigerian, but for businesses. It's one thing for the president to be out there preaching Nigeria, preaching investing in Nigeria to foreign investors, but it's also another thing to make sure that local environment is conducive for these investors when they decide to come. Now we understand that there is the FDI leg, there is the FDI leg. The FDI leg is largely where we have to talk about the structural issues that the country is currently facing in terms of insufficient power supply, insecurity, lack of infrastructure in certain key areas that will help these FDI investors, that's foreign direct investments, to really come and put their business here and set it up here as well, without having to blink an eye that there is something that will either affect or mar their way of doing business. We need to see that happen. On the FDI leg, yes, we did see a surge in terms of inflows coming into the country, especially when we started to see hike in policy rates. It sort of encouraged investors to, trickle into the country. And we saw FDI surge in the past 3 months from March, April. We did see them exit as well, and that's because they were just really testing the waters. So a lot has to go into play, because it's one thing to formulate policy, but it's also something to start to see these policies have a positive impact on the economy. In the power sector, for instance, some of the reforms that they mentioned there was the fact that states can now, sell electricity, which is a positive thing, and it's not just central to the federal government alone. Now states can also play in that space, which is something that should be encouraged and should be implemented to the latter in order to see some form of respite. There are other issues, yes, that would not take a year, that would take more than a year rather, before we start to see the impact positively, its impact positively in the Nigerian economic space. So a lot has to be done beyond just saying or preaching the Nigerian market to foreign investors. We have to look locally, fix our issues locally in order to make sure that these people, when they come, they will be able to have peace of mind and continue their business, set it up properly without any hassle or, or, or issues with regards to the domestic things that I have mentioned so far.
way to start this conversation. The next question is going to be two-in-one question. First is many believe that maybe enough preparation maybe wasn't put together before instituting some of these policies. That's what some are arguing, saying like maybe we're not well prepared for the fallout of subsidy removal and of course opening up of the FX market. But on the flip side, we also see a heavy drive for investment, trying to lure investors to come into the country. Some of these policies are also aimed at attracting this investment. Where are we with regards to that?
So if we look at fuel subsidy, for instance, we still saw that about 5.4 trillion was budgeted for fuel subsidy. That just tells us that it is still at play, because if we look at both the domestic and the international market shows that crude oil prices are on the rise, and FX is still, quite volatile. So naturally, if there was no fuel subsidy, we should have Nigerians pay higher than what they are currently paying. But because of the fact that there's still subsidy in there, just speaking to the 5.4 trillion that was budgeted for in budget for fuel subsidy payments, it just simply means that the government is still providing some form of respite here. And as I earlier mentioned, the flip side, which is the drive for investment, it's one thing to do, which is not a bad thing to do, in my opinion, and that is because you're trying to paint a positive image of the country to outsiders, and that's just what a marketing person will do, a marketing officer will do, which is what the president currently is portraying. But then we also have to look inwards. The policies that they have laid out so far, how are they implementing it, and how soon will these policies really start to materialize? If you ask me, it would not be a one-year thing, but at least in this 1 year that we have seen so far, we should start to see some form of execution on the way that will reduce or give at least Nigerians some form of hope that yes, these policies are actually targeted at economic growth beyond this short-term hardship that we are currently facing. So I feel that we should really look at it from that point of view. The government should really try to ensure that execution of these policies that they have come up with so far are implemented to the latter, so that respite will come, at least between the mid to medium to long term.
Like it's a no pain, no gain scenario there, something like that. Let's look at tax reforms, of course, being instituted by the Taiwo Yedele of this world. We all know when it comes to fiscal policies and all of that. They've come up with some recommendations. We expect more to come. We've also seen some executive orders being instituted. You alluded to that, particularly for the oil and gas industry, where the president's also trying to drive investment. Let's look at all of this, and also, what is the gestation period? How long are we waiting for all of this to start to impact revenue?
So if we're looking at it on tax reforms, yes, we are aware that they are indeed trying to widen the tax net, and we all know that if we look at our non-oil revenue as a country, it's largely from tax revenues. So this committee, they are trying to make sure to widen the tax net, even though they are being considerate of the informal sector. We also acknowledge the fact that the other 5%, they came out last month to mention that 95% of the informal sector will be exempted based on the proposals that they are making to the federal government based on their findings, which is quite good, because if you look at it, it also means rather that the 5% left will be added to the tax net, and that would mean more revenue for the government. If there is more revenue for the government, they would be able to channel those funds that they raise to capital projects that would in turn translate to economic growth or development for the country, which is a positive for us. Yes, they are still undergoing these proposals will still have to undergo screening, and they will still have to assign to them in terms of the federal government just signing these things into law. That's for the changes that would really have to mean a reform in the tax law or tax act. But the ones that do not necessarily need a change in the law, just making sure to add all people under the tax bracket, it would not have to take so much time before we start to see some form of improvement in terms of tax revenue collection. And if we're looking at the oil and gas sector, that's a very critical sector because really that's where the country's source of income is largely skewed towards. And we like that these reforms in that oil and gas space, just trying to encourage investment into that space is positive, because that would mean that we are going to see more private hands, more private investors take up assets in that space. And when that happens, we should see some form of respite in terms of the contribution that the oil and gas sector brings to the entire economy at large. And that, we all know what happens when private individuals take up different assets or handle businesses. It just improves some form, brings about some form of healthy competition, and everyone just trying to put their best foot forward, and that will be positive overall for the entire economy.
Let me take you back to the oil and gas industry again. I have a question surrounding petrol now in particular. Now, we all expect that we've talked about intervention, which government is doing presently, maybe to try to manage the pricing, because economists and analysts like you have said PMS should be selling around about the same price with diesel or a bit lower than that. So that's on one side. We expect Dangote refinery to start to churn out PMS. According to him, Alhaji Dangote said himself that by mid-July, we should start to get PMS from that refinery. Now, putting this side by side, we've not heard from the NNPC with regards to the Port Harcourt refinery. $1.5 billion from the AFDB was spent on that facility. Now, if we look at this together, are we getting to a point where we'll start to address the pricing of PMS when all of this comes on stream?
So when all of this comes on stream, one thing I would like us to understand is that if, at the end of the day, Dangote is a businessman. So he wouldn't be someone that would want to sell at a price that's just trying to make a price that would be so minimal and not business accretive or earnings accretive to him. That being said, his supply into the market definitely brings some reduction in terms of the amount that we import from outside, and that is positive for the economy. So when that happens and we start to use our locally refined crude in terms of the petrol that is being sold, we should see some form of respite in terms of pricing. Now, pricing is not something that will just hit us, that will just change overnight because there's a new product in the market. It's an overtime process. It will take some time, yes, but then we have to start to see that product in the market. But I would also want to add that this, the fact that Dangote is a businessman and he would also want to make money from the business that he has started, which is trying to, in as much as trying to bring about economic development by helping to reduce our imports or dependence on imports of refined crude oil. Oil will definitely see that he's also trying to make money from the business, and he will sell at a price that would be, of course, not so expensive, but then it will be something that will be affordable to Nigerians and in the long run be beneficial for the economy at large because we would import less refined petrol.
Getting more interesting, I must say. Let's also touch on that important market, that's the FX market, which also some of these initiatives are tailored towards opening up that space, getting a bit of regularization with the disparity between the other market and the direct market. The CBN has come up with some policies in recent times. Part of it is even for the BDCs to reapply. I had the president of APCON yesterday, and to them, they are saying, this seems like something that is unachievable. But the CBN has said that's the way to go. What's your assessment, really, my question, of all of these policies instituted by the Apex Bank now to help address the challenges in Nigeria's foreign exchange market? And do you think that we are getting it right in that space?
So I'd like to describe CBN's activities in the BDC or in foreign exchange market as some form of house cleaning, especially with regards to the reforms that we're seeing with the BDC operators. We had over 5,000 BDC operators, and when you have that large a number across the country, you would want to ensure that your supervision of these operators and how they do their business is really tight. So for them to come up with a strategy to say that they should reapply and try to meet up with new capital requirements for BDCs is some form of way it puts just to reduce that number, especially for those that will not be able to take on the business of a BDC operator. So it's a form of house cleaning. Now, the impact of that is that it gives the CBN the advantage of having their eyes really in that market, in that space, monitoring all the operations of these BDCs, eliminating any form of speculation that can happen, and just making sure that they improve their supervision in that space, because it is very important for a country to have a stable exchange rate. And if we are having that volatility, especially because there is some form of speculation going on, it will not be positive for our currency going forward. Now, other things that the CBN is doing aside the BDC cleansing of the BDC space, there are also resumed interventions. We've seen the CBN supply to the FX market at different points in time, at different intervals, which is something that we believe as an FX exchange market player is something that they should be doing. Initially, we didn't have them do that last year, but we started to see them return to the markets, resume their interventions, which is positive. We've seen them hike interest rates as well, which has sort of spurred foreign portfolio investors to bring in their funds. And they have also had several meetings and engagements through the NGX, just speaking to FPIs, just trying to make sure that the aim of having stable FX flows in the market would really bring about reduce the volatility in the FX market. If we are speaking to just this last month, where we did see that all of a sudden the rate started to climb up, it was largely because we started the foreign portfolio investors were just trying to test the waters and ensure that as they have gotten the way they were told that there's a free market exit entry, they should be able to test the waters and just exit the market as well without having any form of hassle or any difficulty. And that was what happened. It doesn't mean that they would not come back. The fact that they came in and they went back, and they're still going to come in because the rates are still attractive to them. So that is just what the CBN is trying to achieve. Of course, they are not using the reserves. They are just using all other tools and means that are open to them for them to just make sure that they manage the currency going forward. And I'd like to add that the long-term view for a stable currency really does not really lie with the CBN. It actually lies with the fiscal authorities, because the fiscal authorities have that sole responsibility of making sure that they get in more export earnings. And how would they do that? We have to look at the cash cows of our economy, the areas or sectors of our economy that are really driving export earnings, and make sure to develop them and bring them up to par. If there are other sectors that could also encourage or improve rather our export earnings, we should also seek to delve into those areas. Move away from oil production, look at the agricultural sector, what we can do there differently that would help to boost our export earnings in the long term. Because really, that is where that's when we'll definitely start to see stability in our currency. All this that the CBN is doing is going to be short term, and I feel that they are just buying time for the fiscal authorities to really set up or put in place what they need to in order for us to see a long-term stability in our currency.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Nabila Mohammed is an investment analyst with Chapel Hill, Denham. Thank you for your contributions to this particular topic and making real sense of it. We appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.